Excellent. So we're going to get started now. So tēnā koutou katoa, ko Bridget toka ingoa no o te tahi aho, he kai mahi aho, e te kamapini o Bead and Proceed, he mihi mai o ha kia koutou katoa. Nau mai and welcome to the official launch of the HRNZ SDG Week. We are so excited to have you join us and to kick things off with our lunchtime sustainability pep talk panel. So my name is Bridget Williams. I'm from Christchurch, Otatahi, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. So with it being Māori Language Week and to really set the intention for the next hour and a half, I would love to share this whakatauki to start. Manaki whenua, manaki tangata, haere whakamoa. Meaning if we take care of the earth and take care of people, we will take care of the future. And that is exactly what our amazing panelists are all about. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to them. We have Jacinta Gulasekharam from Dignity. Now, Jacinta is the co-founder of Dignity, a social enterprise with a mission to deliver period equity and has created access to over 60,000 sustainable period products. She works full-time in the human-centered design consulting team at PwC Wellington. And Jacinta is a 2021 Wellbeing Impact Award winner, Young New Zealander of the Year finalist, Woman of Influence Young Leader finalist, and Sustainable Business Network Changemaker finalist. Incredible. Now, the next panelist that we have is Bobby Lloyd from Reusable. So Bobby Lloyd is a tactile person who loves the built environment and finding creative solutions to everyday problems. His career spans commercial property, furniture making, sustainability consulting, and now running a startup, Reusable, which I'm sure he's going to deep dive into. Next, we have Laura Nixon from Solid. Now, Laura is the CEO and founder of Solid, a toothpaste company, but it is so much more than that. Laura is a former dental professional with a mission to stop the 16 million toothpaste tubes that go into landfill in Aotearoa every year. Solid was a finalist in the 2021 Sustainable Business Awards Going Circular, and most recently, Laura was a 2022 Soda Inc. Rise Up finalist, celebrating female entrepreneurs in Aotearoa. And of course, last, but by no means least, we have Oliver Hunt from Medsalv. Oliver Hunt is founder and CEO of Medsalv, a national recognized company leading New Zealand's healthcare sector towards a more sustainable future. Founded in late 2017, Medsalv works with the majority of New Zealand's surgical hospitals and has been nationally and locally recognized in the circular economy, business for good, and high-tech spaces. Oh, what an incredible panel and such a great way to launch into SDG Week. So to kick things off, we're going to start really basic, and that is, I would love to know from each of you, in one word, how would you describe sustainability? And I'm going to kick things off with Jacinta.
Tēnā tātou no Aotearoa me Sri Lanka, ahau e whānau mai, ahau ki te papaioia, noho ana ahau ki te whanganui a Tara, te peo aki ahau ki Aorangi, kei PwC me Dignity, ahau I mahi ana, ko Jacinta Gulasekharam tōku ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Are you one, everybody? Sustainability to me is generational. It's about thinking about the generations beyond us.
Beautiful, beautiful, generational. Summed it up beautifully. And now moving to Oliver.
Kia ora, Bridget, and everyone. For me, it's future-proofing.
Fantastic. And next to Laura.
Kia ora. To me, I'm going to cheat and do two words. It is everyday kaitiaki. So it's a world where we have a responsibility to be guardians. It's not just a nice thing to do, it's our responsibility to ensure the health of our planet.
Well said. And last, Bobby.
Kia ora, everybody. For me, my one word would actually be framework. So I think sustainability provides a framework and a roadmap for organizations and people to impact.
Love it. I love it. All different, but kind of fit together beautifully. So for the next question that we have, we want the audience to understand a bit more about the great work, the great mahi that you do. So I'm going to ask each of you to briefly describe your mahi and what SDG, now SDG is an acronym for Sustainable Development Goals, what SDG this mahi connects with most. And I'm going to throw to Laura first.
Okay, so I am going to cheat again and say that we connect with very much with two SDGs, which are responsible consumption and production, as well as good health and well-being. So because we're a sustainable toothpaste company, the toothpaste is sort of the health side of things. So we use science to inform our formulations and to make sure that our toothpaste is genuinely going to look after your teeth and, you know, look after people. And then the other side of things, we have the responsible consumption and production of that toothpaste, which means that from the start of our business, I didn't actually know what the SDGs were then, but we now realize that that has sort of informed the whole making of Solid and everything behind the scenes.
Yeah, amazing. Can't argue with those two goals for sure. There are direct synergies there. Fantastic. I'm going to now throw to Bobby. Tell us a bit about Reusable and what SDGs your organization aligns with.
Yeah, thanks. So Reusable is we produce this packaging, which you can see behind me in my nice digital rendering. We produce circular packaging, basically, which is packaging for people to use for their takeaway food. So we stock workplaces with that packaging so they can take it out at lunchtime and grab food in it to eliminate single-use waste. The packaging itself is actually made from an agricultural byproduct. So it was waste, and now it's used to eliminate waste. So I guess the SDG that resonates with us mostly, although we've got a sub one, is probably number 12, which is responsible consumption and production as well. So we're utilizing this waste product in an everyday product to eliminate waste and really ignite the circular economy with everyday actions. And then so that contributes to Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. So if we can encourage the use of materials more, and ensure that the materials we use are responsible, then yeah, cities and communities can be more sustainable themselves.
Love it. Fantastic. Again, real direct synergies. And I didn't realize that the bowls were also made out of waste products. So that's fantastic. So you're really thinking about sustainability through the supply chain. Yeah, awesome. All right, Oliver, would you like to take us through what Medsalv does and what SDGs it aligns with?
Yeah, sure. So Medsalv basically captures used single-use medical devices from hospitals all over New Zealand, and we remanufacture them and then return them back to the same hospitals, usually at a lower cost for them to reuse them. So we actually touch on 8 SDGs. The most obvious one is responsible consumption and production. That's our bread and butter. But we also reduce the amount of carbon emissions, so there's a bit of climate action in there. There's a bit to do with who we employ and how we employ them, so that goes into decent work and economic growth, which is SDG 8, and who we choose to employ, which is reduced inequalities, so that's SDG 10. We're a pretty innovative company, so that's SDG 9 in terms of what we actually do things very differently to how they're done globally. And then the other ones are kind of the sustainable cities and communities and affordable and clean energy. We touch on those, but fundamentally we're all about good health and well-being of all of the people. So that's a really quick run through the 8 that we work on, and we really deliberately think about them in everything that we do. And there's a bit of a section on our website about how that works.
Oh, fantastic. And I think that whole explanation of what you gave us goes back to what Bobby was saying about how sustainability can really serve as a framework. And that's definitely what you've done with Medsalv. You've looked at all areas of impact and linked them back to the SDGs, which highlights that interconnection of the SDG framework. Amazing. And now Jacinta, tell us a bit about the mahi that you do.
Awesome. So Dignity is a workplace initiative to provide sustainable organic period products in the workplace. So we've got corporate partners all across Aotearoa that are providing tampons and pads for free in their bathrooms, and then we give away the equivalent number to those without access all across New Zealand. So we've got around 200 give partners, community organisations, youth organisations, schools, homelessness trusts, those type of places. So there's two sides in terms of supporting employees in the workplace to have access to products and really normalising periods, and then also helping solve the issue of period poverty that exists out in the community. So our main goal, I'd say, is 5 in terms of achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. So something that is really special to my heart. But I think we also touch on 4 and 11, reducing inequalities. And I can't quite remember what 11 was.
No, yeah, definitely. So 11 is sustainable cities and communities. And I'd also say there's a bit of SDG 3 there as well, you know, access to basic health and that hygiene piece too. So incredible work that Dignity does. Amazing. So the theme of SDG week this year, and I just want to say that SDG week, this is an international week that is happening all across the globe. And for this year's theme, it is flipping the script. So I'd love to know from each of you, how are you or your organisation flipping the script in the space of sustainability? And I'm going to go to Oliver.
Thanks, Bridget. So I think for us, it's a bit of we could exist as a company that just grabs medical devices and cleans them and tests them and gets them back to the customer, and that would create some impact. But we've taken a bit of a longer and more diverse view into how we can create impact. And that means that, like, while we do that, we do it in a way that we can employ people who might have significant barriers to employment. And so having that kind of design into the organization at every level has been a bit of a way we've kind of flipped the script on other businesses that, you know, internationally do similar things to us. So that if you look at us at Medsalv from an impact perspective, our impact is wider reaching into far more areas than just purely waste and cost. And that has, you know, some really good implications for the health system, which is obviously trying to generate benefit in terms of patient outcomes, but also so many other areas. So I suppose that's one of the ways we've flipped the script. We haven't taken we can only do one thing. We can actually integrate a whole bunch of things and make them all work well together and deliver an even better, positive, you know, more impactful outcome for our customers and for the people we work with and for our, you know, chiefly our employees as well.
Amazing. So it's you're flipping the script, and in doing so, you're actually just making the framework and the delivery a better experience and better for everyone. It's a win-win-win. Moving on to Laura then, how is Solid flipping the script, or are you doing anything specifically within Solid to flip the script?
So I think we flip the script by, when you think of toothpaste, you think of a toothpaste tube, right? That's just, you know, all pictures of it, you know, wherever you see it, it'll be in a tube. So I think right from the start, we flipped that and thought, you know, how else can we get toothpaste to people? So in that way, we thought tablets, we now have powder, we have toothpaste in a jar, and then we have a return system for all those jars. So I think it's embedded from the start, you know, just thinking, why does it have to be in this form, and how can we make it better, rather than, I think in a lot of ways, sometimes, you know, where you can sort of look at the status quo and try to change it slightly, you know, and make it a little bit better, whereas we sort of started from the start and thought, you know, how can we change this, sort of changes completely, yeah. And I guess also we are a bit different in changing things, in that often when you think of sustainable personal care, it doesn't, or sometimes doesn't have much science behind it. So we are changing that, and that all our products are dentally approved, and it's not that sort of, you know, weird formulations, you know, wrapped in brown craft paper, and you're like, oh, what actually is this? Yeah, so I think in 2 ways we try and flip the script there.
Oh, I love it, definitely. And of course, with your dental background, you've got that experience and that knowledge behind it. So there's that quality product, yeah, with everything else that you're doing in that space of making our teeth better and feeling good about it. Jacinta, how is Dignity, or how are you flipping the script?
I'd say that, you know, periods have long been a thing that has stigma attached. It's a personal, you know, emotional burden that you have to carry along by yourself, but actually by bringing it into the workplace, normalizing that the products are there. You know, now we've got over 90 organizations like Sharesies, ANZ, AMP, gosh, so many different places that are saying this is okay, and this is just part of your life and your everyday. So I think that has been amazing, having these organisations come on board and actually support their employees with something that is super normal. And I think for us, we've always spoken about, you know, providing dignity. It's like having tea and coffee at the workplace, that not everyone has caffeine. It's just another office supply that should be there.
Oh, I love it. Incredible work, Jacinta. Yeah. And Bobby, tell us how Reusable is flipping the script.
Yeah, that was great, Jacinta. Completely agree with that. I think fundamentally some of the problems we face are like a simple, a kind of design issues. So, you know, so we can, you know, not everything needs a new product or a new service or anything. It just can be looked at slightly differently. So I guess what we've done is, I mean, there's reusable packaging around the world of different types, you know, everywhere. There's, you know, everyone's, I'm sure, got a drawer full of Tupperware that and missing lids and stained things everywhere, but especially in most workplaces. But I think what we've done is really try and brand our product. Really obviously, you can see how bright those lids are right there. We've did that absolutely on purpose. One of the big problems we saw was that there's a big stigma associated with taking your Tupperware into the restaurant, and maybe they won't accept it, or you know, your curry stained kind of plastic click clack might not be that acceptable in some places. So what we've done is we've tried to reverse that, and we want people to be super proud to carry an orange lid around town. So now, and we make it really accessible by putting it in workplaces. So it's free for the staff to use. They can take it down, be proud walking down. It doesn't look out of place. It's completely accepted. We've got a list of restaurants who accept it, hundreds around New Zealand now. And I think one other key thing, not only making it clear and obvious and a normal thing to do, but also we, if you ever look on any of our media or any of our Instagram or any messaging, you'll never see waste. You'll never see images of bins filling up. That's how we differentiate ourselves from all the other kind of, a lot of other waste-based or waste-free businesses. We always look at what the future can be and then people having fun with it. So it's just obvious and positive, basically.
Oh, I love the design layers that you've weaved into this. That's awesome. Very well thought out. So, okay, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, the definition of pep talk is a short speech intended to encourage people to work harder or try to win a game or competition. So I want to know from each of you, what makes you work harder? So I'm going to throw to Laura first.
So what makes me work harder is problems, and I'm sure a lot of everyone else here probably agrees with that. So nothing like a good juicy problem that makes you stay up into the wee hours of the night trying to fix it. So, you know, we've got the giant ones out there like climate change that, you know, our toothpaste is not going to fix. However, we can sort of make small steps towards that greater goal along with a lot of other businesses. And then even just little things in the business, like, for example, you know, crumbling toothpaste tablets. That has been a problem. And you're sitting there making your little test formulations, you know, making it, and it's like, does it work? Does it work? You know, or do our jar lids fit on properly? Are they, you know, without the plastic lining, are we getting there? So yeah, I love a good problem, and that's what keeps me going. I quite enjoy them when they come up. It's like, yes, okay, we'll solve this.
Oh, good. We need more people like you in the world, for sure. Sometimes problems freak me out, but not for you. That's fantastic. I'm going to go to Jacinta. What makes you work harder?
I think it's being inspired. We were talking before around the Patagonia founder making Earth the only shareholder of its company. I think every time I see Etique do something absolutely amazing, it's all of these companies here. The other day I was watching a panel with Sdgs, the founder of Yume as well. So I think it's, and maybe they're all, a few of them are female-led companies. And I think for me, I just see that inspiration, and they're really pushing the boundaries and also pushing the expectations of what we should be doing in the world.
I love it. So well said. And Oliver, what makes you work harder?
There's probably three things. So when I walk into our facility and I see just the sheer volume of products that we've collected from hospitals all over the country, and also the sheer volume of them going out the door, like, seeing 4 cubic meters worth of waste go out in an order to a hospital that like is going to be used to keep people healthy and not go to landfill where it would have been otherwise. That's great. So the physical impact on waste is 1. 2, the people we choose to employ, seeing them succeed, that's probably one of the best sort of warm feelings that you see when you take someone who might have had some form of issue that's prevented them from entering the workforce, and then see them really thriving in their role and then even managing others. So that's the second. And then the third one is we work with 44 hospitals across New Zealand, and we are lucky to work with some really motivated people, and we've worked really hard to make it easy for them to do their day job and also contribute to our initiatives. But I've just been visiting a couple here in Waikato, the private hospitals. We work with all of them here, and their passion for the stuff we're doing really keeps us going, because making change in the health system is not particularly easy, but having customers that align with your vision and share in what you want to do is a huge motivator.
Yeah, so true. And what you're tackling is such a giant, right? Because I would assume there's a real stigma around sort of being anti-reusable in the health space because of hygiene reasons and health. So you're having to change that stigma, and then the joy that you get when people are brought in on that journey, and then you get to grow your impact. Yeah, nice, awesome. And Bobby, what makes you work harder?
A couple of things, I guess. Similar to Laura, I love problems. So talking with customers and constantly challenging and re-engaging with what we're actually solving and how we're going about it. And are there any other ways? Can we challenge our thinking? Are there any other, can we help in any other ways? How can we show that we're actually proving this impact? And I love them challenging us to help understand the problems a bit deeper, because sometimes it's not as obvious. And then I guess the other one is actually just really stoked office managers. Whenever I go into a place, a workplace or office manager or workplace experience, or anyone in this, or human resources as well, in this department who'd get directly involved with what we do, when they're in there and they've told me that they no longer have to nag staff about the waste that's being created because of our product, that kind of G's me up quite a lot. So yeah, I get stoked on that.
I love it. Really stoked people makes you work harder, in a nutshell. And you're so right around that piece of questioning our dogma, right? Like, we should be doing that all the time. And I think that is definitely what that journey of sustainability looks like. It's not being afraid to go back and reflect and say, how can we improve this better? But I'm talking to the converted, you all know this. So the next question that I have is, what advice, and I guess this kind of links into what I was saying before, what advice would you give businesses or organizations that are eager to make change, but they just don't know where to start? And I'm going to start with Jacinta on this.
I think that don't be daunted. You don't have to do 10 things at once, just doing one thing at a time. I think what's even better is actually asking your team members, your staff, that they a lot of the time have really interesting ideas of like, oh, I wish we had this, or I wish we did this, or my friend has this at their workplace. So I'd actually probably start with the people in your workplace in terms of what they want. Ask them, really. But I think don't be scared by it. There's some really little things that you can do along the scale, like the initiatives we have here on a personal level, all the way through to your B Corp status, which is quite a long process. So I think start small, ask your people, And places like HRNZ are also great at having that the kind of context of who you can talk to, and it's okay if you're just starting the journey. You don't have to be a superstar in a year.
Such good advice. So true. I think there's this real risk of like glorified sustainable perfection, right? Where, you know, we only share the best stuff on LinkedIn and social, you know, like we've got 100% waste free, or we're completely carbon neutral. But for the business that, like, you know, just needs to, you know, have a recycling bin as a first step, like we should also be celebrating those steps as well. So true. And as you said, Jacinta, as well, that people piece. So the other name for the SDGs is the people's goals. And it's, so you really need to involve everyone. Fantastic. Laura, would you mind taking us through, would you mind taking us through just a bit around that sustainability piece? And
Yeah, so my first thought was the sort of like take the sort of small step, but then I thought probably everyone will be saying that because it is a really good one. Like it's just, you know, that one small step. So I did actually think another one that I think resonates with me is that when you know better, you can do better. So often when we start, we don't know what a lot of these things, like we don't know what happens when we put stuff in our recycling bin. So even just, I guess, either researching it yourself or talking to people or getting in touch with groups who just sort of know a bit more about what happens, just having that knowledge can really help you do better. And that's a journey as well. It's not something you have all at the start. And yeah, the more that we sort of know, the better along the way we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I might be putting you on the spot. So maybe people can get in contact with you once you do have some time to think about it. But where would you say, like, where would you direct people for getting that knowledge and that understanding? Like, are there some resources that you can that have been helpful?
I can actually think of a like actual example. So my when I went to pick up my son from his daycare, the manager was like, oh, you know, do you like, we want to do better at the centre, you know, do you know any like resources, like how can we sort of do this? So I literally just went home and Googled and then found there's a, you know, you can get a free, so I think a free, you know, person to come and talk to you and just help your, you know, the centre do better. So I think there are just these programs out there. It's just, I think, yeah, I guess it's, and there's also a lot of people sort of online, like Ethically Kate, she has great sort of, you know, resources for sort of just making those small changes. And I think there's sort of that information out there, but I'm a big just, you know, Google it. I know that's terrible, but there's so much information there.
No, for sure. But you're so right. And this is the thing, we're caring about sustainability more and more, right? So that information is at our fingertips. You know?
Yeah.
So definitely big fan of the Google. Bobby, do you mind taking us through what could businesses do? I mean, I have a fair idea about what you're going to say. What else could businesses do to really kickstart that journey of sustainability?
Maybe my answer might be slightly different, just because I was a sustainability consultant previously, so I used to do this with people. My first one would be actually squash your assumptions. So remove all assumptions and validate them first. Sometimes the things that seem boring or not impactful are actually very impactful. And just like Laura said, understanding them is like empowering. So one thing I used to see often when I was talking with organizations is that, you know, they would say, oh, we've got this plan, we've got this strategy to become waste-free, carbon negative, more inclusive, procurement sorted, all that. But then they go, why isn't it working? And I ask them, have you talked to any of your staff? And they haven't. And as soon as you do, you know, I used to help them frame up using the SDGs as a framework. Which of these do you resonate with? List them all, and which do the organisation actually fit in, and then which of these resonate with the with all your staff, and then the staff will choose and start with the one that resonates the most. And it doesn't matter if that's a really impactful one or not at all, but it just gets that momentum going, and then you can get some quick wins and small steps, and then you've got the ball rolling, people are empowered, engaged, and then you can step up to the bigger things, you know. But yeah, I think it's honestly squashing those assumptions is super key.
Oh, that's fantastic. And again, that real people focus, right? It's about taking your staff on the journey. They don't want to feel like it's just this thing that is being like put on them. You're going to have way more ownership over something if people are a part of it. And that's another big thing with the SDGs, right? Because a huge theme or the spirit of the goals is to leave no one behind. So it's actually in your favor and your more alignment into the framework if you're taking everyone to be part of that journey and getting them involved and getting that feedback. Yeah, fantastic, Bobby. And Oliver, what would you say to businesses that don't know where to start on their sustainability journey?
Well, first, listen to the previous 3 speakers, because those are all good ideas. I think, and I'm just trying to figure out something new to say. No, I think the key thing for me is we work with some massive organizations, and a common mistake that I see is that people think they need to have everything completely set up to make any difference. So I've had people say, oh, we need to get 35 people in a room to make this happen, which if you're in the health system will never happen, because there's always going to be someone who's got to go to a surgery or something like that. So take the easy win, take the easy route, you know, set up one collection point, it'll organically grow, and do that. I think Jacinta's point about, you know, you're in New Zealand, people like living in New Zealand because it's a pretty clean, green-ish country. People always have ideas about sustainability at every level in the organization, so tap them and then support them. You're going to run into a bit of a dead end if you tap everyone for ideas and then don't implement any of them. So you have to make sure that you're getting support from the top table. And where I've seen real issues in large organizations that will remain nameless is there isn't any kind of executive sponsor who has sustainability in their title, or no voice at the board. So you've really got to make sure that unless you want a whole bunch of little grassroots things that will never take hold across the whole organization, you have support from the executive team, from the board, from the chair, to make it happen, particularly in a big organization. And then finally, big wins never happen overnight. They're actually always just a combination of small wins that have been joined together into a final one. So get good at breaking it down into like the first step you can take tomorrow, and then work from that way onwards, rather than waiting for every start or line. Oh,
well said. Well said. And I love that piece that you say around like just focus on those little steps. It reminds me of a lot of that quote from Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So you've got to make sure you have your systems in place, which allows you to have those sustainable daily habits, because it accumulates. And so you can look back with hindsight and see all of that change. But yeah, we tend to glorify the goal, right? But it's the little actions we do that lead to the goal. Awesome. Okay, the next question I have, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but we're going to dig a bit deeper. Working in the space of impact can feel tiring and frustrating. You might want positive change to move faster, as we've said, you know, and progress can feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So what do each of you do to stay connected to your mahi when these feelings of overwhelm creep up? And I'm going to ask Laura first.
So what I do when this happens is forget about work and go and, you know, put my phone away, go get some exercise, which is really, I find really helps me, hang out with the kids, go to the beach, just do something which reminds you kind of why you're doing all that. So the sort of the nice things that we want to have here for the future, just go and sort of appreciate that, and yeah, come back to things with a fresh mindset, hopefully.
Nice. So would you say nature has a big part to play in that?
I mean, I go to the gym, right? So that's not really nature, but it does, I think, just getting out of getting out of your head a bit. So sort of trying to get out of that sort of ticking over problem solving in your head, to get out of that, you know, yeah, sort of just anything, I think, which gets you into a different mindset. Yeah, so you can sort of turn off your brain for a little bit.
Yeah, very true. And Oliver?
Okay, so similar but different. I usually, and I'm just looking at like this week's version of it, I'll write down everything that I need to do, like everything, every little task that I can think of. So I've got it somewhere that's not in my head. And then I might go like mountain biking or skiing, I see you up skiing or whatever, and take that time to like think about how I can creatively come around and do all of those things within the time frame. And then figure out, most importantly, if I've got 50 things that I need to do, which of those things actually are going to make a difference to what I want to achieve, and which of those things are just going to make a difference to how much work I do and not actually move the dial. And then ruthlessly cut away the stuff that I don't think is going to make a difference. And that's my process.
I love it. I love it. So you still do the list, but it's more of a eat the frog situation. Handle that big thing that's going to chip away at your shoulder if you don't address it.
Yeah, well, there's always, the thing about a to-do list is it's kind of like a not to-do list sometimes, and you just put stuff on there, and once it's been on there for 3 days, you're like, okay. But I think it's just a case of really evaluating what is actually important and what is not. And sometimes you'll get that wrong, but it's just and then having some time to get a bit of distance. How would you get the distance? Laura goes to the gym. I've got sports that I do, things that are not staring at a computer for a while, so you get a bit of perspective what's actually going to make a difference this month, next month, and then I'm meant to be working 6 months into the future, so what actually matters. That's the most important part of being able to solve complex problems, I suppose.
Nice, well said. And Jacinta, what do you do to address that sense of overwhelm when you feel it creep up, when you can feel like, these massive issues that we've got, just your action can feel like a drop in the ocean, like what do you do to address that overwhelm?
Totally, and I think the world is such a big place, and there are so many problems that all of us, individually can work on to hopefully make some kind of difference. I think for me, it's connecting back to the purpose. I absolutely love, the impact reports we do with businesses, because then that is the staff feedback of how they are finding dignity, and it's my favorite part of the business because it's why we started in the first place. People have always get caught short, but I think we've had a construction company come on board recently, and a lot of the women and the feedback there is they've felt really seen and acknowledged that, hey, I'm actually the only woman on this site, but I feel like this is there for me, and I think I love that. So I think it is taking it back down to what is the purpose, and almost what is that the smallest amount of impact that you're making, and bringing it back to that.
Yeah, so true. There's a great quote from Frozen 2. If you guys haven't watched that movie, highly recommend it. And it is, do the next right thing. Like, that's as simple as it can be sometimes, right? There's this real sense of kind of the theme that we've said before. So well said, Jacinta. Yeah. And Bobby, what do you do to try and reduce that sense of overwhelm when you've got this massive issue, and what do you do to address that?
There's a couple of things. I think it's constantly changing, so I don't really have there's nothing has worked for me continuously forever, and that's absolutely fine, because I'm as fast as I make changes in the organization, I also do that in my personal life. So that's things like creating things. So I do things like I make sometimes furniture, I make jewelry, I make wallets, I make a bunch of stuff just to get my mind in a meditative state that allows me to focus on one thing and one thing only at the time, and then I come back to the problem that I thought I had that was overwhelming, and all of a sudden it's this big. It's just really helping myself become present so that I can put some perspective into my mind to allow the problem so I can see the problem for what it really is. And then I really love doing this exercise called 9 Whys. So if anyone's hasn't seen that, it's part of a program called Liberating Structures, which is facilitation techniques. But essentially, someone just asks you why 9 times in a row. If you've got a problem, if somebody asks you why 9 times in a row, you'll figure out why it's a problem, and often it's not what you think the problem is. So yeah, I often do that just for, sometimes even the larger thing of why am I doing this? And then I'll arrive at a really clear, succinct answer at the end, which helps me. And then I'm like, cool, happy with that, move on.
Oh, I love that good we takeaway, the 9 whys. And I completely agree with you around that sustainability piece with Bead and Proceed. Big into that, and how sustainability creativity puts us into that state of flow. We kind of just access another part of our brain, and a lot of these massive challenges will require creative solutions, and creativity sparks creativity. So I'm definitely with you there on that creativity piece. Okay, so the next question I have for each of you is, what is a misconception that people tend to have about your organization? And I'm going to go to Jacinta first.
I think one of the things is that they kind of call it the dignity project, or I can't remember the other word, but I think people don't quite understand, we're in our 6th year of running now. Dignity is all across Aotearoa in 90 organisations, multiple sites, really, really big New Zealand companies that have come on board with our mission. So maybe that's something more we need to work on in terms of our comms, but there is now it is a tide of companies that are recognising that periods are normal, that this is now part of the gender tick requirements, that actually now it is becoming normal to provide period products in the workplace, and workplaces are now kind of we're in that middle bit of where we're getting bulk of companies realizing, oh, there's so many that are doing it now, compared to when we first started, and it was those early adopters, Flick Electric and Xero, that came on board. But yeah, I think that it is normal in New Zealand now to provide period products, and I'd really encourage organisations to do that, even if it's small companies just picking up a box of tampons and pads in the milk run that they do. I think that it should be something there at the workplace.
Amazing, completely agree. And Jacinta, really cool that Dignity is working with the gender tick. For the audience members, do you mind just taking us a bit about what the gender tick is for those that don't know? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but would you mind taking us through about what exactly gender tick is?
Yeah, it's a really good organisation that looks at, how are you addressing gender inequality in the workplace? What initiatives do you have in place? What strategies? What kind of representation do you have? And they're a great organisation. I couldn't recommend them highly enough.
Awesome. So is it like a bit of a certification around what
exactly?
Oh, nice.
That's it.
Amazing. And Laura, would you mind taking us through what are some of the misconceptions about solid?
So I guess one of them is that we just put toothpaste in a glass jar and sort of call it a day. And I like to think that we are more than that. So yeah, part of that has been sort of, I guess, working out sort of what our sort of vision and mission is. And I think a lot of it is as we're not just putting toothpaste in a jar, but we want to change the way that people look after their teeth. So instead of it being sort of a chore, we want to make it sort of more of a ritual and something you want to take time in, and something that you've got beautiful things in your bathroom and you can use them. And that's why we have different flavors, so people just really take that time in brushing their teeth. And funnily enough, that also means that they improve their oral health at the same time, because often the thing that people don't do with their teeth, which can cause decay and gum disease and all that, is just not taking enough time. Like literally taking more time flossing or more time brushing increases your oral health exponentially. So I think that's sort of what we want to do is be kind of more than toothpaste in a jar, but change the way that we think about looking after our teeth.
Oh, you guys are so much more than toothpaste in a jar. And it is fantastic toothpaste in a jar though. So I'm going to move to Oliver. What is a misconception for your business?
There's been a few. So, they range from where your headquarters, i.e. we think you're a multinational, and so we just tell them the glamorous Christchurch. And then what else? The name of the business, Medsalv, Bridget, but I think the key thing for us is actually, it's not a misconception people have about our business, it's a misconception we had about our customers. And we thought that our customers were buying our products because they're cheaper, but we recently have sort of unpicked that even our first customer, which was a CFO for a major hospital, had actually decided to use our products not because of the cost savings, but because of the sustainable benefits and the holistic sustainable benefits. And we're now seeing customers who are going, we'll pay more for your product if it's environmentally beneficial, and we'll pay even more than that if it's a sustainable supply chain solution. So that was a big learning for me and for us. There you go, flip the script on that one. But yeah.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. Do you want to tell people how to pronounce your organization, just to really, nip it in the bud?
Yeah, so it's called Medsalv, and that's a combination of the start of med or medical and the start of salvage. So you can kind of figure that one out, put them together, you got Medsalv, and that's it.
Yeah, fantastic. Now we'll never get it wrong.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to name a business in the medical space because, med whatever is named and trademarked. It's just, it's tough stuff out there.
Tough stuff, tackling the big problems in life, but you actually are. So moving on to Bobby. Bobby, what is a misconception with Reusable?
I think probably maybe a misconception about packaging and takeaways in general, which affects us quite heavily. So people tend to think that compostable packaging is fine, single-use compostable packaging is fine. And I think it's when people, often even the restaurants that serve the food, they will say, oh no, but we have sustainable packaging. Yeah, there are certain niche environments where maybe there might be a need for single-use packaging, but if that doesn't end up in the appropriate place, in terms of the waste stream, it won't be composted. And when it goes into landfill, it releases methane. So not only has it been drawn from the earth, manufactured, shipped to New Zealand, used for about 13 minutes, and then straight into landfill where it releases methane. So there's massive impact along the whole supply chain. And I think people think, oh, it's just one piece of waste. It says every single staff member who gets takeaway 3 times a week. So I think that a misconception is that, Reusable isn't having a great impact. I think is maybe one of the big ones. So that's we've set out to try and redefine that, but instead of really trying to educate people, we're just going to give them another option because it's really hard to do that re-education piece, and it's easier to give them something which they can deal with, which actually improves their experience. So yeah, and then there's other things like how to spell our name. Reusable bowl, yeah, all that stuff. REUSEBOW, yeah, all these things, yeah. And then also I think with a lot of startups and companies of our size, maybe this is general for all of us, but it definitely is for us, they think we've got a whole team behind us doing everything, and they think you're a large organization. When sometimes, on the other end of the Instagram messaging, it's probably us, or on the other end of the admin or hello at email, it's definitely us. So yeah, it's quite a funny kind of misconception people have.
Oh, fantastic. And now I'm just going to quickly pause and say to our audience that if you've got any questions for any of the panelists, please feel free to take some time to add them in the chat now. If you've got a question that you'd like all of them to answer, then yeah, please put it in the chat because there will be time for questions at the end. So moving on to my next question, and this is a bit of a fun one, and I'm personally really curious about this because I really look up to all of you. So I want to know, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received, and how do you weave this through your organization? And I'm going to start with Bobby this time.
Cool. I think although we're solving, somewhat urgent problems, and there's a bit of a deadline to some of the things we're doing a lot of the time, especially in a climate space, I think a really important piece of advice I was given was sleep on it. It sounds so simple, but reacting can create a mistake today that can't be undone tomorrow sometimes. And if you can hold that decision for 24 hours and just sleep on it, and then take a day, come back to it, ask yourself again, ask your team, ask your mentors, ask your advisors, ask everybody about this problem. And then you might find, in fact, either it's a small problem because it almost is always smaller than you thought it was, or actually there's an opportunity in there. So like, you kind of flip it and you're like, oh, I'm out of that headspace now. I've done my creative or exercise or whatever thing. I've come back to the problem and I've thought, oh, actually, this can be turned into a great opportunity, because wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So it's, I think sleeping on it really helps that a lot.
Nice. And Jacinta, what is the best piece of advice you've received and how do you weave that through dignity?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can get so caught up when there's deadlines and there's campaigns you're doing and you need to talk to this person, and particularly at the time when I was leading the campaign to get the government to fund free period products, and there were a lot of different stakeholders involved with different agendas and different priorities, and it was really hard to see through in terms of, oh my gosh, what is the right way through? And the best piece was in terms of, who are the people you're trying to impact? Think about those, because that is your audience and that is your North Star. And I think it really reframed all of the noise in terms of what media needed to be done and the Instagram posts and all of that stuff. It's like, no, let's just go back to the basics of who are we trying to create this change for. And that's probably the same for any business or organization, just taking a moment to think, okay, what is the purpose? Who are we actually trying to help here? Because that they are the people that you need to be worried about, and they're the ones you need to have front of mind.
For sure. So Jacinta, can I ask just a follow-up question on that? For dignity, who would be those people?
For us, there's definitely the employees in the workplace, but I think for me, what comes to mind is definitely those in the community that we're supporting, that they're already facing so many barriers and challenges. So how do we provide a really great choice of products, in terms of the pads, tampons, the menstrual cups, the period underwear, so that they are given the autonomy and control about what products they actually feel comfortable using?
Yeah, incredible. And was that, sorry, follow-up question, was that a learning in itself, realizing that actually if we really want to empower, we should give people choice? Was that like a learning in itself, or was that something that Dignity knew right from the start?
I think for my co-founder Miranda and I, it was just a cornerstone of what we did. We wanted to, and I think that's part of giving people dignity, is giving people the autonomy, control of what they want to use and what they feel comfortable with.
Incredible. And Oliver, would you mind taking us through what is the best piece of advice you have received and how do you weave that through Medsalv?
So I've had a lot of advice. So my best piece of advice is actually in relation to advice, and it is, don't treat people you've just met like your board of directors. And what that's saying is, your stuff better than anyone else, unless you're not doing a great job, and you haven't, been doing the things properly. But that stuff better than anyone else, and you bring a perspective that's different. So if you talk to like a super high-powered CEO and they give you their thoughts, you've got to remember that they're bringing those thoughts from their perspective, and they don't know everything you know. So, and even your board of directors necessarily might not, depending on what you write in your board pack, say. So whether you've got a board of directors or a manager or, stakeholders, customers, you've got to recognize their perspective and treat them understanding that perspective. You've got to validate it, of course, but just don't get swayed by people who you just meet who don't have any thorough understanding of what you're doing day to day, because that's a surefire way to go off track and chase a pipe dream, which is probably not going to go anywhere closer to, as Jacinta said, the people you're actually trying to impact, trying to affect change for.
And has there been an example? You don't have to give us a specific example, maybe all of it, but like maybe just a loose example where you've actually, realized that when you trust your own instincts and your own gut, that it's actually, created better results before. Has that sort of happened?
Multiple times, but I mean, there's a couple of examples. One was the high-powered CEO person I met, and they said, "Oh, you should be shipping all your product to the Cook Islands because it'll be easier." And it's like, you fundamentally misunderstand that we collect the product after it's been used and then spin it around our remanufacturing. So, you know, thanks, but you're really pattern matching and you don't understand the nuance of my business. And the other one was, oh, you should just package it all up and send it to one of the American companies. You'll make way more money like that. Not recognizing that that's not why our customers are involved in our programs to ship stuff to America and back. They're involved because they want to see sustainability in all its forms be leveraged in their business and in New Zealand. So there's two examples of someone who, you know, at first glance knows more than me, has more experience, has more, you know, a mana in the business world, but their advice is, you know, should I follow that? Not going to be much useful or conducive to a good success. So no matter whether you're in a for-profit, not-for-profit, community group or otherwise, I think that's probably one of the most important pieces of advice I've received over the years.
Fantastic advice, and for all those that are in that startup phase as well. Yeah. Laura, what's the best piece of advice you have received, and how do you weave that through Solid?
So yeah, I was just relating to what Oliver said there. Having people say to you, you know, oh, why don't you just put it in recyclable plastic? That would be better, wouldn't it? And it's sort of like, oh, but you do. Come on. But yeah, so I think for us, the best piece of advice has been to focus on the open doors, not the closed ones. So one of our values is improving oral health, and for this reason, and for what the science says currently, our toothpaste contain fluoride. We don't make a non-fluoridated toothpaste, which closes a lot of doors for us. So there are, you know, I'm not going to name them all, but, you know, there's certain, like, you know, websites that just wouldn't touch us because of that. But then it does open some doors because, for example, we are getting sort of more of a profile in the dental community because of the fact that, you know, we stick with those values. Yeah, so I'd say, yeah, there's a lot of open doors out there that you don't need to be, sort of trying to convince people who don't sort of agree with your sort of core sort of basis of your business.
So true. I always say that there are 3 people that you will come in contact with, and they are your challengers, your champions, and your cheerleaders. And anyone in any business is going to face all 3 of them, right? So you've got your challenger, which will always question what you're doing, say, look, I've got some great advice that I really recommend you do this, but they don't really have an understanding of, you know, of what you do. And then there's your cheerleaders that are just going, you know, go for it, I love what you do. But then there are your champions, which are opening those doors. So you're always going to face those 3 C's, I reckon. Cool. So I'm really keen to know what is next for each of you on your ventures. So really keen to hear, you know, what have you got in the pipeline? What can you share with us? And what can we do to help? So I'm going to go to Bobby first.
So I guess we want to bowl in the hands of every single worker, every single workplace in New Zealand. We want every single person to be able to access reusable packaging and use it, and we want to see empty bins in workplaces. So on the way of doing that, we would love to create other types of packaging and things like that. And the way to do that is to get more packaging out there so we can reinvest back into the company. So I guess the big, hairy, audacious goal is to become something like the Allbirds of reusable packaging, where we use natural fibers to create packaging, and they are cool as anything. You know, like we want them to not just be on the fringe, but we want reusable packaging to be the absolute norm. So I guess that's that. Yeah, and if you don't have reusable packaging in your workplace, we got some.
Yes, you do. Fantastic. And Oliver, what is next for the venture of Medsalv?
So kind of similar to Bobby, we want every single hospital in New Zealand that does surgery and uses products that can be remanufactured to be doing that. And then we want to add more products. So we've got 44 hospitals that we work with now. There's about 65 in New Zealand. So if you're in one of those 21 hospitals, you know, a lot of the public hospitals in the Midland region aren't using our products. We'd love to be there, and we can make it easy for you to make an impact. So that's what's next for us. And then it's, adding more products to that so we can magnify the impact for our existing customers.
Amazing. Oliver, could you take us through what some of the new products will be? Can you share that? If you can't, and that's all right, don't worry about it. We'll just have to wait and see. So follow Medsalv for more. I will throw to Laura. What is next for Solid?
So we want to be everywhere you buy toothpaste, just so we can get out to more people. We do want to bring out a lot of new products. That is my favorite part, is creating those. So yeah, at the moment I am working on a waste-free whitening kit, because traditionally they are just so filled with plastic, syringes and those blue light things which you don't even need, etc. So yeah, currently working on that. It's sort of in the final stages, which is really cool. And we're also on the other side of things, we are progressing in our zero waste in-store toothpaste refill machines. So we have one at the moment in Good Housekeeping in Wellington. So that's just a way of dispensing toothpaste, like actual liquid, liquidy, solidy toothpaste into jars. And so we are bringing out our second one of those at Be Free Grocer in Palmerston North on September the 24th at 2 p.m. if anyone's around. So, and then I guess want to, one of our values is innovation. So just pretty much keep innovating as things, more things come around, and not sort of be stuck in, one way of doing things. Like as new things sort of, we can do things better, keep doing things better, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And can I ask, do you think Solid is going to get into other areas of, of health? Do you reckon?
I think probably, because my passion is in the oral care space, it's probably be going more into the specialist oral care, probably. So like dry mouth gels, denture, just sort of into probably more toothpaste for people who have sensory issues and can't sort of handle the flavors or textures. That's another thing actually I'm sort of working on. Probably the more specialist oral care space, because there are actually lots of oral care products when you get into it. So I think we've got a ways to go there first.
Fantastic. And Jacinta, what is next for Dignity?
I'm so inspired hearing about what everyone else is up to. Oh, it's so cool. For us, we're still on that mission to deliver period equity through Aotearoa. There's still workplaces that can definitely come on board with providing period products to all their staff. I think in the last couple of years, we're also seen an increase in making this more inclusive in terms of providing these in either gender neutral bathrooms or in the men's bathrooms as well. So I think everyone's really on the journey of removing period stigma and making sure these products are accessible to everyone that needs them.
Definitely. And so this next question, this feels like a real podcast question. So if you had a billboard that was stationed somewhere where so many people would see it, so there was heaps of foot traffic, what would your billboard say? Now, hopefully you've taken some time to think about this. Otherwise, I'm definitely putting you on the spot. But I'm going to go to Oliver. What would your billboard say?
Okay, so it's not one billboard. It's a billboard for every hospital that's not currently using remanufacturing their products. And it says, make your empties, and we cross that out, DVT prevention sleeves, go another round. And we put it like on the front door of the hospital, basically. So right in front of them.
Love it. Fantastic. And Jacinta, how about you? What would your billboard say?
I think there was one we made when we were actually in our incubator end of 2016, and it was a woman with a coffee stain on her shirt, and that we were just going to say "caught short" with our logo. That I think there's some really obvious things in terms of, oh my gosh, lunch spills in your bag, or you get coffee on your shirt, but when you're caught short, like it is that similar panic situation. So I there will be a draft somewhere in the drive with that billboard.
Love it. That's fantastic. Very clever. And Laura, what would your billboard say?
I think it would say, have you tried solid toothpaste? Because you should.
I love it. You're just like, enough said. Just try it. Yeah. Excellent. How about you, Bobby?
Everyone was promoting their businesses and I'm over here doing something real meta. I was trying to make it real cool. Now, honestly, my one would probably be call that friend. I know it sounds a bit silly, but like you can get so stuck in everything you're doing, and sometimes those closest to you might feel really far away. And we always think about it, you know, calling those people. But you call them, and then honestly, they're so smart and they know you so well that they'll solve a lot of your problems, and you'll feel super stoked by catching up. So yeah, just call that friend.
I love that. Call that friend. Advice to everyone listening today, call that friend. So the next question we have, and this is our last question. So please, if anyone else who, if anyone listening has got any questions for any of our incredible panelists, please now is the time to put them in the chat because we will be asking them. But I would like to know if you could have a nice cold glass of kombucha with anyone in the world, who would it be and why? And I'm going to go to Bobby.
I'm stoked I'm going first because I was hoping no one else got mine. So mine would be someone who's been in the news over the last couple of days, who's Yvonne Chouinard, who's the CEO and founder of Patagonia, and just gave his company away and said, you know, the planet is our only shareholder now. So he's put together a bunch of trusts and things to enable all of the profits to go to climate initiatives. So I think that person's pretty amazing, and that would be a great person to have a kombucha with.
For sure, for sure. And Jacinta, who would be your person that you'd have a kombucha with?
It's actually someone I know that you've met, one of your pals, Helen Clark. I think I am really drawn to, I think, female leaders, and particularly what she's done in terms of going on the world, you know, the global stage of getting some really important initiatives and awareness to different ideas, and even what she's doing here now at the moment with her foundation and the research she's producing to really, you know, I think spark some interesting conversations around drug reform and all sorts of different topics. And I think her documentary, you know, showing her journey and actually being really vulnerable with what she shared was amazing. So I think so many questions for her.
Yes, no, she's an incredible person. Yeah, I did get to have lunch with her and we got to talk about all the SDGs. My recommendation is reach out to her on Twitter. That is what I did. She is very active on her socials and is a fantastic wahine for sure. Oliver, who would be your person that you would have a kombucha with?
Well, might sound like a bit of a cop-out, but I really like the way that Apple products are marketed and like all the things to do with their brand and the way that they change behavior and get, you know, lots of people excited about something that is, you know, fundamentally just a physical object. So for that reason, it would be Steve Jobs. I reckon that like everything that he did about design in terms of designing out waste, making things efficient and so on and so forth, be really interested to get his take on how that would be applied to the health system. And, you know, he's obviously just was a pretty cool guy. So yeah, that's my answer.
Love it. I wonder what kind of flavor kombucha he would have as well. Definitely like a raspberry and lime. Strikes me as that kind of guy. Laura, who would be your person?
So for me, it would not be kombucha. I'm sorry. No matter what I do, it tastes like sick to me. But and I actually really struggled with this. I was like, who would I actually want to sit down and sort of, I don't know, talk to? But I'm not actually great with chatting to people. So I would probably just like to sit and hang out with my kids because they're just unashamedly themselves, and the way kids see the world is just, I don't know, it's just really nice and sort of refreshing. And yeah, sorry, it's not a great answer, but
I think that's the best answer. That's lovely. Thank you, Laura. All right, so we do have some questions that are in the chat. And the first question that I have is from, okay, so here we go. So we've got someone who is watching has asked, we have a recycling system and lots of signage, but people still get it wrong. How do we educate staff? So is there someone that would like to jump in? And oh yes, Oliver, go for it.
If I were you, I would put, this is fundamentally what we do day to day all around the country where we collect products. And it's great to have a signage and a poster, but it's the things you really need to consider doing are show the benefit. Like, why are you putting it in that bin? What does that mean? And put a number around it. If you want to get a result, measure it. The Drucker quote, what gets measured gets managed. So if you start measuring how many things get put in that bin and you put a scoreboard on the poster, then you'll start, people trying to beat it. That's our experience. And we have a lot of reporting software that does that for all of our collection points. So that's my 2 cents.
I love it. What gets measured gets managed. And Laura, you had an answer as well.
Yeah, my answer is probably a bit different. My opinion on recycling is that it's more just a sort of empathizing with that, because just, I don't know, recycling in New Zealand is just insanely complicated. It's you almost need a degree in it. Like I think even at home, like I think I've finally got our recycling down, but it's really hard and it shouldn't be. So I think the answer to me is probably it's not so much educating staff, but having a nationwide sort of logical system for recycling would be my take on that. And also making sure that once it gets in that bin, also making then sure that it gets recycled or it can be recycled. So I think it's sort of symptomatic of more issues in recycling. Sorry, that's quite depressing, but yeah.
No, I think that's such a good point that once again, it comes back to full circle. We could all be improving in that space, and that also means, how can the actual recycling component be better? Bobby, what's your answer for this question?
So it's kind of playing on both, I guess, a little bit. Yeah, I completely agree that the whole system's a little bit flawed. In a small country, not having unified recycling is pretty odd. But one thing I would say is what I used to do with some of the clients is actually do a waste audit. So you make it very clear, and that's not just about measuring the weight and volume, but it's actually about showing people what's in there. So if you get a tarp and put it on the bottom of your office, pour all of the waste out for everyone to walk past and see, they're really going to know, where that stuff's come from, who it belongs to, and what you can actually reduce. So you'll see some very common items, coffee cups and single-use packaging is like predominant. It's almost all of it. And then you can start bringing people along and help them understand and connect the solution with the problem really clearly.
Love it. Great, really tangible advice. And I have another question from someone who's attending. So this is their question. It is great to see a bunch of young Kiwis pursuing what they are passionate about. How did you guys gather that courage to make that leap to start your own business? And what advice would you give others who have big ideas but aren't sure how to get started or are scared to get started? So is there someone that wants to take the plunge and answer this question first?
Yeah, happy to go. Miranda and I started through a business accelerator program, and I think that's a really great way if you are ready and able to commit your time into something like that to get really into a space with the mentoring, the other teams and the ideas. So that's really if you've got something formed and you're ready to apply and go into something like that. But even prior to that stage, just talking to people, do a bit of research yourself, do a survey, just put it out there. And I think what's been really important along our journey is, we've got a fantastic team. I've got a co-founder that I can bounce off. So, if one of us is down, the other one will bring each other up. So I think it's really important before starting on mahi like this, because it can be really lonely and scary and daunting to have your support crew. So whether that's within your idea and venture when you're discovering things or alongside your journey. But I think just start by talking to people, do some research, and you will never feel ready. I remember when we were in the boot camp, and I think about 5 weeks in, we were going to launch our Facebook page, and we were so scared because we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to put the Facebook page out there. It makes it real. Everyone's going to know. What if it doesn't work out? Well, what's the worst that can happen? You take down a Facebook page. You tried something. So I think just give something a go and find your people to help support you with that.
I love that. Find your people, for sure. Anyone else that'd like to chip in to that question around how do you take that leap when you're when you've got a good idea but you're a bit afraid? Yes, Bobby.
Yeah, I just like Jacinta, email one of us, email someone else doing it. We're always around for a coffee. Oh, I'm speaking for myself, but maybe the others might not be. But you know, like there's not many there's 1,500 startups in New Zealand. It's not many, and I was actually at a startup council meeting last week about trying to improve the conditions for startups, and I think that and how to support them. And honestly, that like going through this experience is relatively lonely sometimes. Because there isn't many of us, but the support's building, and it's really important to know from peers, not just mentors, because some of them haven't done it, but from peers about what the reality of doing it is. You know, I think that there's some tough questions you need to ask before starting things, but yeah, call one of us, have a coffee. Yeah.
Yes, Laura.
Yeah, just pretty much adding on to that. I think also you'll find that speaking to other people who've done it or other entrepreneurs, they're just so helpful, and so never like look at you like you're dumb, you know, like whereas they, you know, sometimes people, you know, other people might look at you and be like, oh, okay, right, that's interesting. Whereas even if you have sort of some kind of weird idea, generally people will be, you know, other entrepreneurs will be really down to discuss it and, you know, have a chat about it. So yeah, I've found that people are just so helpful.
So true. Oliver, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, my journey was a bit different because I was doing my master's project, and so it was kind of an opt-in, easy thing to start on. But I think there's probably two things I'll add. One, this is actually sort of a Jeff Bezos thing, so you know, humor it a little bit. But if you take an 80-year horizon, so where you are at 80 years old, and then, you know, make the decision against that, then that'll frame it up a lot better than, you know, potentially whatever job you currently have. And, you know, when you look back on it and go, should I have taken a wee leap here, even though it's small, into another business that I started myself, or just stayed in my, you know, corporate job doing something else? That puts some perspective around it, and I think that can be quite helpful. And then, yeah, to echo what Laura says, you know, every founder is an idiot in some frame, depending on where they are. And so we will be incredibly receptive to people who are actually out there and willing to give it a go. And that's quite an interesting dynamic when you can walk into a room with people who range from like founders who have raised millions and millions and millions of dollars through to people who have just started. And there's a massive amount of respect. And I think, you know, in Christchurch, we have a good community of close to 60 people who meet that description in some way, shape or form. And all over New Zealand, there are people like that. So, but what everyone likes to see is the effort made to get something going, rather than sort of the consideration while they sit in a job somewhere else about maybe doing something. So take the first step, ask someone for a coffee, and don't be afraid to, you know, give it a shot, I suppose.
Yeah, so true about that effort piece, for sure. I feel like I can kind of chip in with this as a fully recovered solicitor that now paints beads for a living. There was a big leap into doing that, much to my dad's horror. But there were two things that really helped me. And that was when I was in a really bad place mentally with the law and practicing law. Not that I was in trouble with the law, two very different things. I remember my partner said to me, Bridget, where could you go if you took Bead and Proceed 100%? And I didn't realize that was the permission I had been waiting to hear. And so sometimes if you've got an idea, or if you're, you know, thinking about wanting to start something in the business that you're already in, you know, we don't always have to think about the entrepreneur. There's also the intrapreneur, the person that's making a difference within the business as well. Sometimes you're waiting for that permission. So this is me giving you permission to do it now. And the second piece of advice is this beautiful quote from a Chinese philosopher called Confucius, which is, they say you have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realize you only have one. So start living that second life. And I see we have another question as well. This one maybe more specific to Oliver. Since Medsalv incorporates sustainable people practices in their organization, what advice would you give in terms of implementing sustainable people practices?
Okay, this one, I'm going to share a bit of why we do what we do in terms of our reduction in inequalities type of employment. And the reason we do it is, when I was doing my summer startup program at the University of Canterbury, like 2 months into starting Medsalv, we went on a field trip to a company or an organization called Kilmarnock Enterprises. Now, if you haven't heard of them, there are a couple of other organizations similar to Kilmarnock around the country, but they're basically a sheltered workshop which allows people who might have intellectual disabilities of different forms to have a job. And they do some really cool stuff. So, for example, your PAM superfoods for the South Island all get packaged by Kilmarnock. They do your Air New Zealand headphones, and they wipe them down and repackage them so they can go back onto flights. So they already had a little bit of that circular economy stuff there. And we initially went there, the ISO 9001 accredited, which is a good tick from our perspective. We tried to figure out if we could make what we do work in their organization, and we couldn't, because it's too specialized and there's a few more controls. But I saw the process, and I saw the ability to for them to create processes that kind of anyone could do. And so that meant that when we started designing machines and processes and things, we didn't design machines with gauges and dials. They've got a red light and a green light, so it's very obvious for anyone with relatively little training to get it right easily. And so everything that we do where we can, we've made those kinds of decisions. And that's why having that conversation at the top level in the design thinking phase, I suppose, or whatever you want to call it, enables us to do it. Because if we had just operated as a business with lots of, like, you know, super intelligent engineer type people who have got degrees and things, and then we started trying to change into being able to do that, it would be really hard, because we'd have to re-engineer a lot of our processes. So what I'm getting to is, be deliberate about what you're doing with the end in mind. And you might be in an organization which today cannot actually do any of that work. But if you know that the north for that type of employment in terms of sustainability is to have processes that can be completed by people with relatively little training, or, you know, not ability to read complex information, say, then you will take steps towards that over time. And that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. But yeah, be deliberate about who you're looking to target for employment, be they, you know, underemployed populations of people from any walks of life. There are multiple, you know, ways that people are underemployed. Take some time to understand those people, and then breathe that through whatever you're doing in your organization, so that you can actually make the jump to having them employed in your organization at some point in the future as easy as possible for them. And it's not that hard, is the other thing. You know, people will surprise you with how capable they can be. And then finally, we've also been able to work with organizations like Skillwise and Catapult, which are Christchurch-based organizations that facilitate the employment of people who have barriers to employment. And they've been fantastic. So we're in the process of hiring some new people, and they'll come around and they'll have a look at the role that we're looking for, and they'll say, yeah, we've got 5 people, and we're going to help them through the interview process. And we've been, you know, thrilled to be incredibly successful with most of the people that we've employed there.
Wow, amazing. That's, again, such a highlight to what you're doing around SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. Definitely, Oliver, you've really nailed that. Last call for questions. I'm going to wait awkwardly for like 3 seconds. All right, well, Jacinta, Bobby, Laura, and Oliver, thank you so much for your time and insight. I feel like I'm going into SDG week with so much enthusiasm and inspiration. So another massive thank you to all of our panelists. We hope you have a fantastic week, and nohora. Thank you.